All right, so today on our review session, okay, we are looking at the review of solving proportions. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 or 4 of these problems with you just to make sure you can get it started. And today is one of those work days where let's see, hey, kind of what you have. Now, just so everybody at home knows what I just talked about with this class is that how we're basically going to do this is we're going to recover 2 topics right now until we get closer to finals. And then with those 2 topics, I'll give you an optional assignment on Friday where if you do that and complete that, I will find a way to add some extra credit points to the test from this unit if you can do well on that worksheet. So that's kind of where we're at. That's why we're doing this. So we'll go from here. So let's start with solving proportions. Okay, so with solving proportions, all right, what you have to remember is to solve a proportion, you have to do the cross product or cross multiplication. Now, what a lot of you learned it as was probably the butterfly method. And remember, I was like, don't use that. That's not a real term. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So how you do cross product is you've got to take the top of one side and multiply it by the bottom of the other, and then do the bottom times the top. Notice making that X-like figure you can see there. So green would go with green. I would have 9 times 3, and that is going to equal the other side, which is 4 times A. And then it's just multiplying those all together and solving it out. So if you did this, you would get 9 times 3, which would be 27. And then you would get 4 times A, which would be 4A. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, and I'm not sure if y'all truly remember this or not, but when you solve these, what was the one thing that happened a whole lot? You got decimals, okay? So we typically like to round them to at least 2 decimal places. So that would be the hundredths place. But you want to work it out and see what you get. If it comes to a stop, then that's what you want to do here. But basically what happens is we have 27 divided by 4, which gets you out 6.75. So that is what A is equal to. So that is how you would solve one of these basic, proportions. Now, as we go through these, some are going to be more in depth than others, and they'll go and you'll kind of see what's going to go here. So the next one I'm going to look at is number 5. Okay? Number 5 is the same idea. Here are some things that have to happen in number 5. The first thing is you need to go, hey, these are 2 fractions, so I can do cross multiplication. Okay? Now, here are some of the keys to remember. This is a negative 7/10 on the second one. So remember, we always treat the negative like it is up top. So really, it's a negative 7 over a positive 10. Okay? Then you go doing through your cross product. So you're going to have x plus 9 times 10. And you're going to have 3 times a negative 7. So what you've got to do is when you translate this stuff, you got to make sure that you write it correctly. So you end up with 10 and then in parentheses, x plus 9. I write it this way because now it looks like I'm going to have to do what? I think somebody said it, the distributive property. That's good. On the other side, you're going to end up with a positive 3 and a negative 7. Now, as you go through and look at this, you've just got to make sure that you're doing all the work. So, you take that 10 and you distribute it. 10 times x is 10x. 10 times 9 is 90. And that is equal to, well, over here, 3 times a negative 7, negative 21. Then you want to solve this. So this is actually kind of what we did yesterday, right? This turned into solving a multi-step equation. So the first thing I would do is subtract 90 from both sides. I get 10x is equal to, well, negative 21 and negative 90 make negative 111. Is that right? That is right. So then, to get x by itself, you got to divide both sides by 10. And if you take negative 111 divided by 10, guess what you get out? Negative 11.1. How do y'all feel? You okay with that? Okay, so those are two problems that we did on the front. Let's come down here and look at number 9. Okay, we're going to look at number 9 because the number 9 is another one that's got a couple different things going on, and we'll end up doing 4 problems. Well, as you look at number 9, the big thing to notice, there's a what? Well, there's 2 p's, but there's also a negative. So remember that negative goes to the top. But then, yes, you're absolutely correct. There's 2 p's. So that means as we go and solve this, we're going to have to move things around to get our like terms together. Okay? So, as I look at this, I'm going to cross multiply. And let's see what we get out. Well, we end up getting on one side negative 9 times p plus 10. And that has to equal 10 times p. Everybody good with that? Okay. Now, on the left-hand side, we've got to distribute, right? So you got to take that negative 9 and distribute it to the p and the 10. So that gives you negative 9p minus 90. And that is equal to, well, 10 times p is 10p. Now, as you look at this, there's a couple ways you can do this. Okay? Some people would want to move the 10p to the left. I'm not really a big fan of that. What I want to do is get all my p's together. And if I can get them together on the same side by themselves, I save myself a lot of work. So what that means is, instead of moving this 10p over, I actually want to move the negative 9p over. Well, how do you undo a negative 9p? You add 9p. And if you do it to one side, you've got to do it to the other. So that gets you negative 90 is equal to, well, 10 plus 9 is 19. So you got 19p. Now, to get p by itself, you want to divide both sides by 19. And you end up with negative 90 divided by 19. And you get out a crazy decimal. I ask you to at least do 2 decimal places. So you would get negative 4, and then it's 0.736. Well, that would become 0.74. So negative 4.74 is equal to p. How do y'all feel? Feeling okay? All right, I'm going to do one last problem with you, and then I'm going to let you work on the rest of this, okay? So the one that I'm actually going to work is number 11, okay? I chose number 11 because you're going to end up not having to distribute once, but distribute twice. So you look here, there's no negatives to do anything with, so you've just got to do the cross product. Now, I'm very specific on how I write this. I always want the single term to go in the front, right? So for my green one, it would be 5 times a plus 7. And then for my yellow one, it would be 3 times a plus 8. The big thing here is just making sure the correct single term goes with the correct binomial. So there it does. Now, you guys already know we're going to have to distribute to be able to simplify this. 5 times a is 5a. 5 times 7 is 35. That equals, well, now you got to distribute on the other side. 3 times A is, 3 times 8 is 24. Now, what you should remember when you solve these kinds of multi-step equations, it doesn't matter which side you move all your A's to, you just got to move them. So I don't care if you subtract the 5 over or you subtract the 3A. I personally try and keep them positive. So what I would do is subtract 3A from both sides. So that way the A's cancel on the right. 5A minus 3A is 2A. So you end up with 2A. You didn't do anything to the plus 35, so you bring it down. And that is equal to 24. Okay? Then you've got all your A's together. You want to isolate them. So you should start by subtracting 35 from both sides, because it was positive. 2A is equal to negative 11. Divide both sides by 2. And you end up getting A is equal to, okay, negative 5.5. That is 100% correct. Awesome. Okay, so there are 4 of your 24 problems. Okay, I want you to go ahead and look at knocking out the rest of these. Remember, this is practice. We'll get another practice on this tomorrow. Okay, so let me know if you have any other questions. Ready, set, go.